Hi, welcome here for another episode of Event Tech on Tap. I'm here with Ben Brown. Hi, Ben. Good to have you.
Hey, Nick. How you doing?
Yep, great to chat to you. So Ben and I have worked together for a little while now, doing a lot of things on the intersection with our product and getting out to market and the marketing side. So it's great to have some good insight from you in this little podcast. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, hopefully I can add some value. We can go through a couple of bits that kind of join the two worlds of event marketing and sort of digital marketing, and how they lend themselves to each other. You asked earlier how I'm getting on, and I'm definitely, I think, with a 14-week-old at home, sort of depends on the day, and I think how I'm getting on is good. So I had about 6 hours sleep last night, which I think sets me up on the sort of good side of the spectrum with regard to how I'm feeling. I actually stopped wearing my it's my Apple Watch, not a Whoop, my Apple Watch, which sort of tracked my sleep, which I used to wear all the time to wake up, work out how tired you were, and then your watch could tell you weren't tired or were tired. Now I've stopped wearing that because every day it started telling me I was tired, so yeah, there was no upside. So now I can just tell myself that I'm tired versus letting technology tell me, which is fun.
That's the name of the game. All the event professionals watching this are like, yeah, that's every day, Ben. That's the normal.
Yeah,
6 hours is a great day.
Yeah, no, it's all very fun, but yeah, it's definitely not getting more than 8 hours sleep has always been something which I struggled with, which I'm sort of becoming a master of. So I do all my deep thinking at sort of 3-4 a.m. during sort of a contact nap if I to get them back down.
It's good thinking time. I'm out of the woods. Mine's 4, so I'm home and dry. He's almost got a job. He's going to be leaving home soon.
yeah, get him to work early.
Exactly. So let's jump in. Let's try and get some insight. We've got 4 key themes we want to run through. So first one is, how can event marketing be effectively integrated into an existing digital marketing strategy? So what are your thoughts there? Kick us off.
I think the first thing about this is the way that it's phrased. And if you go back maybe 10 years ago, maybe even slightly less, it was all how does digital marketing lend itself to our event strategy? So events were in B2B, sort of like the be all end all, the big events of the year. You'd have some sort of cornerstone ones that you'd go after, spend all your budget on, have the bigger expositions, maybe some smaller ones as well. And it was like, how can we use this internet thing to get more eyeballs and get more people to sign up for our event? Whereas I think especially in the last 3 to 5 years in particular, it's and I think especially since COVID as well, it's trying to work out how event marketing and event strategy can fit into your digital marketing as a wider place. So digital marketing is sort of like the meta, and you have then event marketing, which is a massive part of B2B in a lot of industries that we still work with, but how ultimately that can then drive your digital marketing strategy as a whole. So ways in which there's probably 3 key ways in which you'd use event marketing to drive your digital marketing strategy. One from or primarily from an amplification and targeting standpoint. The first one is you probably through LinkedIn or through other social channels have your current ads going out, whether it's case study ads, whether it's info ads, whether it's high intent ads, whether it's emails, in-mails, whatever it may be. So you have your ICP defined, you know who you're going after, hopefully. And then when an event comes around, it's a really nice way to be able to, one, refresh the creative. So for example, you could have been nurturing people through LinkedIn ads, display campaigns, whatever it may have been for the last 6-12 months. They kind of know who you are, they're aware of the product, there is maybe some interest there. Events could then pop up as part of your next ad creative to try and drive them to the event, to sort of bridge that gap between online and offline world. So sometimes all it takes is a meeting in person, for example, to push people over that line, to get to know you more, to be able to objection handle things, and otherwise they're not going to talk about online. So I think that's really the first one, and it breaks into 3 sections, I'd say broadly. One is pre-event, one is how can it be used during the event, and the final one is how can it be used after the event, and then how do we quantify it? So pre-event, again, is about adding it to the channels, trying to work out how we can drive people there. Do you guys have free tickets you're able to offer? Do you guys have certain things at your stand which are going to be found useful? We used to do a lot of videos for ourselves when we were doing events, or for clients who are doing it, where you can highlight where your stand is, for example, in the show from comms or LinkedIn ads beforehand, targeting people who have liked the event or lists or your current target audience market.
Or tease what's going to happen, what we're going to talk about, why should you come, what's the interest, beyond just you're attending.
Yeah, and beyond just pens, I think pens are like a big one where people try and well, I've got something stuck in my tooth. Um, Pens are a big one. Obviously, people have like all the swag that they try and bring people in. Again, I do love coming back home from an event with a lot of pens and a lot of paper and a lot of stress balls just to help with the day-to-day life. But ultimately, it's not going to be a draw. It's sort of on passing. So, outside of pens, is there sort of like a, if you're a cybersecurity company, is there sort of like a real-time audit or sort of like sort of process you can run someone through? Is there going to be sort of exposure through an interview or sort of fireside chat? What's the pool otherwise that's not sort of self-serving, that you
Yeah.
can get people to bridge that gap? We did, like, for example, when we did the B2B Marketing Expo, I don't know if it was last year, we did a video that was like, come to our stand, we'll do like, a real-time audit of your Google Ads campaign with you can look over the shoulder sort of thing. So what's
Yeah.
the drive? How can you then tie it in? And obviously you're kind of building credibility to an extra extent, because you're
Yeah.
obviously attending these industry events. You're obviously going to be, it's one more touch point, it's one more different perspective that you can
It's two
take on
things.
sort of promotion.
It's a bit of show don't tell, but rather than a salesperson standing there saying, yeah, we can do this, it's going to be great, trust us. It's like, here it is, we've done it for you, you can see the value, now you're going to work with us on other stuff. And there's a great example of that. There's a company called Shoutout who do a lot of the events I've been to recently, especially around the UK. And essentially they're videographers, they do event videography, but they go to events and they're actually selling their services to the organizer to go around and interview all the exhibitors and get a quick Vox pop from them, which you can then download and share to social on the spot, basically. So you're getting this great piece of content. You're like, thank God I didn't have to hire a video team to do it or bring the marketing team out. And it builds just such credibility and such kind of good vibes with the exhibitors there. So you're much more likely to actually have a meaningful conversation afterwards. So I'm with you.
Yeah, no, I think anything like that makes it easier for people post-event, because they're driving people to your stand. And a lot of times as well, I don't know if it's something you've come across or you've heard about, but with online and sort of highly targeted marketing from a firmographic perspective, you can obviously get your messaging in front of people you want to speak to. With events, without the proper preparation and getting these people driven to your stands, you're going to have conversations with meaningful companies and businesses which fall inside your TAM. I think the first 10 people who walked past our stand, we chatted to, they were, I think half of them were B2C, just having sort of a day out. Half of them were sort of just other suppliers looking for a chat. And you'd end up repeating the same thing every single time. And you sort of like have the same conversations, and you realize like 10 minutes in that, it's a nice conversation, but it's not a commercial conversation which has any sort of potential value to the organization. So
that's so true. You come out the event and say, oh, I had a load of great conversations. And it's like, well, people are nice, but they don't want to buy.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's why it's good just to sort of try and push as many people, pre-event, and sort of, that you try and bridge that offline online gap. If you're going to London and a lot of your clients are there and you're based, up north, for example, and don't get to London or not, it's a great way to try and batch all of those and try and get them like an informal meeting to sort of push it along and have those conversations, which gets everyone excited, gets everyone excused to get out of the office and sort of meet up, or same sort of equivalent online, to be able to sort of field some of those questions and learn a bit more about your audiences. So that's very much pre-event, and I'm sure we'll get onto some tactics that we can use to actually cleverly try and push this messaging out and stuff with current and potential new prospects. The other one is, like I mentioned, during the event, and you just touched on it, whereas one of the big parts is the credit. If you've got a big stand, you spend this money on it, last thing you want to do is just have 100, 200 people see it, that walk past it and engage with it and actually bring it in. If you have the videographers, if you're doing a talk, if you're doing anything like that, make sure it's captured, take the pictures, take the videos, create the angles, do some sort of community engagement stuff there. There's any sort of big creators that have audiences in your space, potentially go and look to do like a collab with them, or sort of work out ways in which they're going to be able to amplify your content. So what content can you create off the back of it? Even just sort of taking the video, for us, video talk and, recording the talk and uploading it was great from like a validation and credential standpoint, because you've got 100 people watching a talk, good questions, sort of good audience engagement, and you can then use that as part of your content, which gives you, a lot of the time people have, and now to target their audience, but their ad creative needs refreshing all the time. And we need to have as much ad creative as possibly can, and different angles and using events as part of that is going to be, if you're spending all this money on this event, you might as well make sure you can amplify it to your whole target audience market versus just, the 1% of people that are actually turning up to the show and then, having those sort of conversations. I'd much rather have one very good conversation amplified to everyone than have 100 conversations on the day and, knacking myself out and want to go to bed like crying a little bit. And then, not had a single good conversation. So definitely using...
To jump on that point though, so you talk about ad creative. In the digital world, in digital marketing world, it's great these days. You can put 100 different ads out and really sort of have minute targeting on a small sort of group of people. So you can really personalize your approach to people. In events, you can't really do that unless you've got this mega stand with lots of digital screens. So how can teams navigate that? What are some good tactics to say, oh, God, we got to pick one tagline. What's it going to be? How am I sure I'm going to get the right sort of tone,
Mm-hmm. And I think that's an interesting one. So say if someone's doing a talk and I think it comes sort of during the event and coming up with sort of the content ideas, we always had sort of like one of the things about going to events I think everyone should take advantage of is one is sort of like what is the sort of current, I don't know if the right word, but sentiment in the industry. What are the things that everyone's talking about? There's always the buzzwords. You probably go to, a certain, B2B event now or event. It's always, what's the application of AI, for example. But these are all sort of like, I think this is kind of like the echo chamber of marketing or other industries. There's always going to be echo chambers of, what you think people want to hear, but they're probably burnt out about the same variation of the topics. Normally what happens is when you go into an event, there's going to be like 5, 6, 7, 8 more breakout rooms. You can kind of see which ones and what their titles are, and you can see the ones, there's always some that are absolutely packed, and there's always some which there's no one visiting, and you think, oh, I thought everyone would be visiting the AI and, LinkedIn talk, when actually they're visiting the, how to use AI and, to implement, brief creation and keyword research process. So I think it helps you sort of visualize in a real world way what is working. I think also you kind of know from using paid media your most successful bits of content. And I think this is kind of where events should, learn from your digital marketing strategy, that if we create, we post every day on LinkedIn, for example. Some days I put out a post which I think is, pretty average, but it gets a lot of engagement. People really sort of spurs up a discussion. Save those sort of things next time you're doing an event. What's probably going to resonate with the wider audience. If everything else, it is hard when you can't split test real world event stuff. So I think it's, you need to have a real sort of close ear to the ground and work out what's going to resonate, because then the more you do that, it sort of comes down to the integration of strategies we mentioned earlier. One was, pre-event, getting people to sign up. One is during the event, getting people to record. And the next one is post-event and amplifying and working out who you've met at the conference. One more touch point. How do you sort of quantify the, return in sort of this broad sense of like the long-term play of all this content and how it's sort of brought into your strategy outside of direct response.
So I guess just to throw some tactics out there as well to layer on top of that, we're not many people are talking about just pure in-person events anymore. There's always kind of a hybrid element, whether it's an event tech layer, we've got an event app, whether it's a true hybrid event with virtual audiences was open sort of for longer afterwards. And so there, you do have an opportunity to have this kind of more personalized approach, because, okay, even if your stand or your chalet has got one set of stretch fabric graphics and you can't change that, you can push messages and personalized content to people's phones, which is really where our eyes are half the time anyway when they're walking around an event. So you can have that joint approach. So having a really considered thought around, okay, how am I going to engage my community? What kind of messages are going to push out? How can I segment it within the audience of people I know who are attending, whether they're chance attendees, pre-booked meetings, competitors, suppliers, whoever? That's the opportunity that needs to be taken. And that's where I guess the events teams and the marketing teams, if they're not the same team, which increasingly they are, really need to collaborate and talk and make sure they're aligned on that stuff as well ahead of time.
Yeah, agree. And at the end of the day, I think when it comes to tech enablement, technology and social platforms are all just, ways in which to guarantee or aid, delivery. It all comes down to the message and the data segmentation and messaging is sort of where you need to start and where you need to test, and the teams work together. And then the marketing team, for example, goes away and does the go-to-market or the delivery of that rollout and works out how they can get the message in front of the person who's attending the event, and then quantifies the return off the back of it. But yeah, the messaging, everything else is everything from the product team to the events team to the marketing team to, sort of top down from, the strategic messaging and what they want to push from the company and everything else. So there's a lot of different ways, and that's really that, you can advertise on a billboard in the middle of nowhere, but if you have an amazing message, I'm sure it will convert someone, compared to if you have an awful message and it's, in Times Square and an interactive billboard, you're going to convert absolutely no one and just burn through a lot. So yeah, it's always messaging first. I think it needs to, obviously, like you mentioned, starts with segmentation, then audience sort of research, whether that's going to be from feedback loop of current customers or whether it's looking at your ideal customers and what they're sort of looking at. And then off the back of that, you create your strategy, which within your strategy can potentially use one of the tactics, which is events. And then within the events, you have the sort of sub-messaging and the objectives of the event and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of things to intertwine, but yeah, marketing, tech, product marketing, research sort of all sort of creates that big silo of the revenue and go-to-market teams.
Yeah,
I appreciate I just said a lot of things there.
That's great.
Some of it was top level, some of it wasn't, but yeah,
well,
all meshed together.
To round off the point then, what about the post-event?
I think post-event is the key bit, and that's, again, working out how you then amplify the content and then how you sort of work out the impact of it long-term. I think in most of B2B, everyone always argues with the attribution model. A lot of the times, as people talk about self-reported attribution, where it's like, how did you hear about us? Was it an event? Was it, LinkedIn? Was it whatever? Chances are it's going to be an amalgamation, and the one they reference is the one that stands out in their mind the most. And events are always big things that stand out in people's minds for meeting people versus sort of, watching a YouTube video, for example. So I think you can look at post-event analytics and say, okay, 6 months after the event, we've actually got 3 name contacts, which we know we spoke to at the event, which were either driven from our marketing to the event, or we actually met them. These closed. We've also closed another X amount of pipeline from people who, had seen impressions or received emails or had engaged with content around the event as well. But I think it's going to be, like you said, a mistake to look at it all in a sort of vacuum. It's going to be part, and you want to get your message out there, you want to speak to the right people, and you want to then quantify in sort of 3, 6, 12-month feedback loops to say, okay, here's our CRM of qualitative data that we know, that we ask people how they heard about us. These are sort of the event-based stuff. It's XYZ at an event. This is our quantitative data that we know from a cookie-based track attribution model, that they came to our event, we had their business card, took a photo of it, uploaded it to HubSpot, for example. They then came in down the line, or they've seen, they've watched the whole webinar that I did at the event or podcast, whatever it may be. So it depends how people's attribution backend set up, but it's definitely worth looking at, which one was absolute from the event and which one was sort of part of the journey, as it were.
So just pause on that point then, like a bit of an ELI5, explain like M5, the cookie-based attribution model. How are you taking people who attend an event and then sort of retargeting them, tracking them afterwards? What are some tactics people can use there?
Yeah, so there's probably a difference between sort of like own data and third-party data. So the own data will be people. So the cookie-based stuff, again, it's not necessarily relevant if you have it straight into the CRM, but if someone goes sort of through to your website, hits the page, then watches, downloads a recording of your event, and then comes in, or doesn't download a recording because it's not gated, but then comes through and converts, that's going to be part of your efforts from content marketing and event perspective. The other way of doing it, obviously, is you're probably going to have a list of people that either you spoke to, or third-party data of list of attendees. You can do things like upload that list of attendees potentially, if they're, then layer it with firmographics or technographics, and say we're targeting these people. You target them again for a 6-month period with different levels of creative, depending on their stage of awareness. And then if they come in, again, looking at that CRM feedback loop, even things like from a tactical level, which I know we're sort of going to get onto, but spoiler, going into it, there's a cool, I think from a tactical level, there's a few cool things we can do, which again probably lend itself to more traditional sort of attribution as well. One is going to be sort of bidding on terms around the event and ranking in Google Ads, or even things like you want customers to come through and sort of cut through that noise, bidding on brand name. You can then say someone bids on your brand name, you appear saying, we're appearing at this event here, get your free ticket. It starts in, and then one of the cool features now of Google Ads is a countdown. So you can actually count down to days, which I've always liked to gimmick like that. So you can add that in, and you can obviously try and get people to sign up through that. Even existing customers, it's going to be cheap clicks because it's your own brand within Google Ads, and you can control the landing page experience within it. You can potentially try sort of competitor bidding and a few different variations of that. The other one is looking at the likes of, night before on Facebook, for example. People may be staying at a big event in hotels around it. Could we target everyone within a mile of XYZ postcode? Target all these people saying, come to our event, sign up for this lead magnet, let's call it, at the event tomorrow. From a traditional cookie-based tracking, they'd ultimately then come to that page, fill it out. That would then be in the CRM system. They fill out, a quote, or they become part of your pipeline later on. That feedback loop then allows us to say, traditionally, we know without even having to ask them, this is the activity that moved the needle. But it's probably 50-50. 50% you can probably work out on your own. 50% you're going to have to sort of, dig a bit deeper and sort of look at the answers from what they've said.
So that leads us on nicely to the next piece, which is around how can we actually quantify a bit of brand awareness and lead gen. So we talked about it a little bit in terms of, measuring some of the more sort of data-driven metrics. But what about the soft stuff? You talked about surveys and talking to people. How else can we look at brand awareness and sort of brand equity and how that's improved by an event and how that flows through in digital marketing?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, really. It all kind of, becomes part of how people measure internally. And there's going to be bigger, I think it depends on industry as well. There's going to be some industries which need to create more awareness just because they're an emerging tech or an emerging company within a competitive space. From a brand awareness solely point of view, that's when you sort of start looking at the more what people call vanity metrics with it all. So you post things from the event, you look at sort of the feedback from the event, you look at how many people have engaged with it, you look at sort of like, comments, likes, shares. When you post it online from the event, how's it sort of being perceived? And I think just any questions from the event. So going there and working out, has anyone actually heard of who you guys are? That was always my thing. We went to our first event and no one had heard of who we are. And I was like, next time we come back, everyone will know who Session Media are. And we haven't actually been back since, but I doubt it's going to be a few percent because, it's a much easier thing said than done. So quantifying brand awareness, especially for an SME, is not easy. I think you have to look at things, it's going to be a digital marketing strategy as a whole, increase branded, searches, pipeline velocity of, how many leads you're getting in and sort of revenue that you're pumping out from, direct search. But it's not going to be something which is sort of like one event quantify. It's going to be, here's a year's worth of event and digital marketing strategy we'll put together. Let's try and sort of, have these like ongoing conversations and sort of feedback loops to work out what's working from a brand awareness side of things. But
this is it.
Sorry, Nick.
I guess that's where I mean, for a start, you've got to differentiate yourself from what the messaging of competitors is. All too often, especially in B2B land, you walk around a show and everyone is saying exactly the same things in different colors. Sometimes the colors are the same. So how can you possibly want to stand out in that kind of space, right? You've got to be a different person. You've got to have a different voice, whether it's more punchy, more direct, more compelling, cheekier, whatever it is. It's kind of crucial. Have a personality, right, for your brand. But then also, don't think of events as a one and done. Events aren't just something that happen for 3 days once a year, and then sometimes 3 days once every 2 years. It's something that should be a continuous sort of part of your touch points with your customers. That doesn't mean attending lots and lots of events all year round. For some brands that works well, for others not so much because they're more niche and there are less events. But it does mean saying, okay, we've made all these connections at this event. Let's keep talking to them throughout the year and build a community, which is this sort of always on event, and that's where, again, event apps come in really well because you can actually engage with people continuously and you can keep pushing relevant content and keep sort of providing the value that you might have had as that attractor at your event year round, so it's easy to sort of, especially in the event prof land when you're busy delivering. I think, great, don't have to think about that again for a year. But actually, it's the opposite. You've got to keep up the momentum. Otherwise, your interest dips again and you've sort of wasted a lot of that energy that's gone in there.
Yeah. And I think that's the two words you said was, that's when an event sort of turns into a community. It's like digital campaigns. People think, I can post once on LinkedIn or I can spend a lot of money on this one, PR feature, or I can do this one, Google Ads campaign for 3 months. It's sort of one-off activity, which is like a big swing. And the hard thing about that is rarely, unless you hit the money immediately, it's going to work. But even then, it's only going to work for a short period of time. It doesn't compound. You see, you post on LinkedIn for 2 years, you start seeing, the ROI, but you kind of go down that path on the feedback, on the sort of few leads that do come through and convert and sort of keeps you true. And then you kind of hit that sort of like sense where it starts compounding. As much as I hate that word, it does start compounding into the events. And I think that's the same thing. A lot of our clients, especially around the COVID time, started then doing weekly, monthly, whether it was webinars, podcasts, live, XYZ. And then every week or every month, sort of people knew that was happening. It gave them a chance to touch in with the brand, ask the questions. Those questions then became source for new content. And then you're able to sort of work out off the back of it, people start referencing these events and everything else. And I think webinars, events, one-off podcasts, people have tried them. I think there's a stat that if you do more than 6 podcasts or 10 podcasts, you're already in the X top percent. I think it's probably the same with events. People do one event, don't get any leads, and then think, not doing it again. But ultimately, it needs to be like, we'll do maybe more consistent events and sort of smaller, maybe micro events, rather than spending a whole budget on one big event. We haven't advertised it. We haven't, we haven't leveraged any of the content. We didn't try and drive sort of pre-sale or whatever of the event tickets, and it's done in isolation. So I think that's a real one. It's just, again, it's just a delivery mechanism of content. And if you're not, delivering the content in a way which is succinct with your positioning, and that's probably the big one as well. People go to events, they don't, no one's really spoke too much about their positioning or what their message is. Their only objective is to get those contact details and spam them through email.
Exactly.
That's the
I
objective.
got X number of leads. We've been successful. It's like, it's not quite how it works.
Loose definition,
Let me jump on a point there, because what you've said has just really sparked a point, which is a hot topic discussion amongst all our clients, with us as well. Email. What's happened to email in the last couple of years? It used to be such a reliable way to keep in touch with people, send newsletters out, send regular contact out, send sort of marketing automation out. These days, I'm seeing huge brands who are getting snapped up by our firewall. We've got an EOR firewall, Barracuda. There's the deliverability on content, especially sort of HTML branded content, has dropped massively. What's going on?
So I don't know massive amounts of email, but I just know from sort of my own interest in the space. I know in the sort of at the moment Google's sort of rolling out a big sort of update where if you get a certain amount of you get caught in a certain amount of spam filters. I think it's always someone, more than X, a very small percentage of people report it as spam. You then get blocked. So mass email from sort of like the Gmail scrapes and stuff is going to be much harder moving forward. But also I've kind of seen I kind of see the other side of the thing. I kind of feel like now, because since iOS 14, people started getting, there was like a big narrative that shifted and said, you shouldn't be renting your, audience from these platforms. iOS 14, Facebook's going to take away your audience. They're going to take away all your data. You're going to, you're going to lose all your money, your business, your house, your life, livelihood, all of that sort of stuff. And there's like a big narrative. It's like scaremongering to be like, you need to build your own lists. And then people now, then there's a big rise of the creation of the newsletters. And I think newsletters is a great medium, but I think it's come from the fact that people have been scared they didn't own the audience. But then, like you said, the spam filters are probably getting, more and more crazy, that people now, are going to find it harder to deliver their message to the audience. And I think just across the board, it's getting more expensive, harder to deliver your message to the audience, which hopefully then makes people think, okay, if I am going to get it through, I need to get people to actually opt in, which means my message needs to make sense, and it needs to be synced up to everything else that we're doing across the board. So we have actually seen email, and people getting a lot more into talking about email and wanting to add that back into, again, there was probably about 5 years, everyone was like, email's dead. Just like SEO has been dead, just like Google Ads has been dead, just like events have been dead. Everything's always dead until it's, the next big thing, which everyone's talking about. And, why haven't we done this before, sort of thing. So I think email wise, I think it's great, but it's only as good as how much your audience actually wants to hear from you. And the problem is with newsletters and email again is, I actually signed up for one about 6 months ago because I loved it. I got sent it. I was like, I'm going to read this every week. This is the best thing that ever happened to me. This newsletter. I can't remember who it was from now. It was in the SaaS space, and he works as part of a venture capitalist firm. It's such in detail. I was like, it must take them days to write this. So I'm going to read this every week. This is worth my time. If this person sells something, I'm probably going to buy it because, I like his content. Whereas then I signed up for like 5 or 6 more, which I kind of liked because I kind of got like addicted to like being like really into this newsletter. And now I don't even read his newsletter because I get spammed with these other newsletters, which I don't even read. So now I kind of just like top button, or people don't have red button on call. So I think,
Yeah.
if you're sending emails, it needs to be, I think sending emails for events and stuff are quite good because I think, it has like a direct call to action. There's a point in the email, and I think people may see it from a brand they work with, prospect their competitors. They may see their content elsewhere, but there needs to be some sort of value given to it, just like everything else. Or, these days people do a lot of research; they can find their own information. And if you're sending them unsolicited stuff, which isn't, doesn't have a direct purpose and a call to action which is relevant, I feel like, it may not be worthwhile. I don't know if I answered your question or if I just kind of went off on a rant about the life cycles of channels.
No, I think it is. I think it's about relevancy, and it's about having a message people care about, not just saying what you want to tell people. I mean, in our world, for example, it's like, oh, we've got to tell people all about the new features of our products. But like, people don't care about the features. They just care about actually, is it going to make their lives easier, and is it going to make their events easier to run, right? If you're buying event tech, you don't care whether it's got a drop-down menu that does this. You care that as a holistic solution, it's going to be easy to use and quick.
I think also updates, and I think big ones people care about is like you condensing the updates in the industry. Like all of our best posts and emails and stuff is always like, what the iOS 17 update means for, GSLID data on incognito, or what like the new features of XYZ platform moving out, or what works in use cases, or breakdowns of successful campaigns or brands. So it's hard, and I think it all stems from a strategy of how you plan to target this these audiences, and what what sword you're willing to die on, if that is a strategy as well. So it's I definitely think email is there's a lot of stuff that can be done with it, but I think it's like anything else. If people get millions, and if it's not readable, then delete it.
No, it makes sense. So we've got we've got time for one more topic, I reckon.
Okay.
So we'll blitz through it just to sort of fly through. Which one do you want to do? Do you want to do how can you use events for content ideas, or how to promote events through digital marketing?
I think, the content idea one is an interesting one, because I think it's just, when you walk through events, when you first start going to events, it's more like, overwhelming. I think the next thing is to really work out, like I mentioned earlier, there's going to be the echo chamber of what people talk about and what people feel like they should talk about. And there's always the classic stuff, and you have the content marketing is pretty much just derivatives of someone who's come in and said like a big opinion, which has got a lot of traction, and then that'll throw through the marketing space from internal, from Slack channels, from people seeing it on LinkedIn, and that will sort of then be the content marketing way. But a lot of people are kind of sick of hearing it. What you kind of want is to go around and, like I mentioned, look at the talks and what actually people are finding interesting, going through and actually listening to people who've got the biggest audiences at the end of it. What questions are people asking? Because people love asking these questions at the end. And I think just keeping your ear to the ground of what's going on. And also there's always people at events where other people at events talk about those sort of brands at the events. So like, have you seen what X, Y, and Z are doing? Like really interesting over there, sort of thing. And just I think it's like when you go to do digital marketing and you start buying something and you start actively buying, being like, why am I buying this thing? Like, why this ad made me like feel like I want to buy this. It's going to events and being like, okay, what sort of feedback are we getting from these brands? What are they talking about? What are they actually trying to solve? What questions are being asked the most? Where do these sort of like pain points mean in like real life? And I think that's where the like rawest content comes from, is meeting people in real life and people asking questions. And we used to do quite a lot of like little talks, and the questions at the end were always ones I'd never expected as well. I always thought of like myself as like, I know exactly what someone's going to ask. I know like all the biggest pain points, and then someone will come out of one with like completely left wing, and I'll just be like, wow, I never even like. And then you've got to answer it on the spot, and you have to sort of in your brain sort of like you know all the pieces of the puzzle, and you kind of understand what they're talking, but you haven't had time to like bring it all together and like consider both sides of it. So I think getting that stuff, and then that's pretty much my whole thing around the YouTube channel. I don't really do keyword research. I don't do much. I don't do that. I kind of just look at whether it's the comments, whether it's from people asking from events, whether it's people asking from comments on social, creating that side. But the raw response we've always found is questions, and questions that people get you when passing stands or after talks, or what people actually set up to listen to.
Do you know what? I'll tell you one of the I mean, I totally agree with you there. People are the key. But one of the cleverest bits of event content sort of marketing that I've seen recently, you ever heard of a company called Thursday?
Thursday, I'm the one to do all the creative billboards and hold the things up.
So they're like a new dating app, right? They're only open
I've seen them on LinkedIn.
Really, really clever marketing, really, really clever. So they actually attended Wimbledon, right? But they didn't pay to exhibit at Wimbledon or attend Wimbledon, this global sort of sporting event. Instead, they sent a couple of their team out with some billboards with some like sort of hand signs they'd made out of cardboard or something, and it said "scan for singles," had a QR code on it. And
not that, that's good.
Rather than tennis singles, it was obviously downloading the Thursday app. Which is just brilliant, because they didn't spend a dime on that. They probably spent about 20 quid on the print. But they've managed to capture the Wimbledon audience and get in the news cycle on Wimbledon, and also have this funny message, and none of their competitor around there even touching it, and probably getting some great visibility out of it. So something else that's not dead, guerrilla marketing isn't dead.
Guerrilla marketing, growth hacking, but it all stems as well. And I actually posted links about this yesterday. Is growth hacking and guerrilla marketing is cool, but you need to have your foundations in place, right? They've got obviously a product market fit. I imagine they've got a product market fit in the industry. I don't know what their user numbers are like, and haven't used the platform, but from what you see online, it looks like it's sort of very popular from that side of things. But they also have their messaging from an audience. From an audience research point of view. I think the story is that people didn't want to always be on dating, so they only wanted to date on Thursdays. So they kind of then let them put all their focus into that. So that was obviously the feedback they got from the audience. They rolled it out into their product market fit, and then ultimately their whole like marketing strategy and messaging was just consistent along that. And then I think I've seen loads of people like holding up random. I think there was this one lady who was interning there who was like she was holding up something. It's like, I like lost a bet and now I've got to like find a date or something. It's like in the street, and it was getting like thousands of likes. But all of that sort of stems from a content strategy, and then they're using guerrilla marketing as the amplification. And whether you pay for, it's all that stuff done right is always going to do really well. But again, it comes from what messaging we want, what's the messaging, and then what's the vehicle of amplification. And they've gone down the sort of like sort of out there guerrilla marketing amplification, and then the way in which they probably quantify it is going to be half direct response, people signing up. They know because the day that they signed up was Wimbledon Day, and there's like a QR code or something. I don't know how they were converting people onto the site. I imagine it was some sort of QR code or something like that. Or then the other side is going to be they're getting mass press, and that in itself is brand awareness. And how do you quantify the fact that me and you have heard about a dating app Thursday, for example, and like talking about it shows that it's like blown outside of its demographic, like the target audience market, but it's gone mainstream. And I think you obviously want to become industry famous first, but there's always going to be the sort of like larger effect of going mainstream if your industry focus then sort of ties in. And we do with our link building.
Perception is 9/10 of the game, right? If you're seen as popular and desirable, then you're winning. You're winning the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that was always the thing. It's like when that's like our digital PR approach, and it's the only probably time we try and not always just target the people within the industry. Is if you could sit next to someone and talk about, we've got one of our clients who's in, say for example, commercial cleaning space. If we can sit in next to a pub and tell someone about a campaign we want to launch to get them into loads of publications, if they find it interesting, we know that it's going to do well in the industry and outside, and that's going to get the links that we need in order to be able to rank their site for their commercial terms. So yeah, whether it's digital PR, whether it's sort of guerrilla marketing, I think trying to work out in which elements you can sometimes go a bit broader than the span, but it needs to tie back into a sort of detailed objective that you're trying to achieve, and it can do that. I think in digital PR and especially B2C as well, which Thursday is.
Yeah. Ben,
Cool.
thank you so much. I think
No problem.
we've gone through so much content.
Yeah,
It's going to
from
be
everything
hard.
from events to Thursday's dating app.
We've
Yeah,
solved the world's woes. It's going to be hard to put enough chapter markers in this video, I think.
for sure.
But I really appreciate it. It was really great chatting as always. I'm sure we're going to talk for hours more. But thank you very much. Great to talk.
Yeah, you too, Nick. Thanks very much. Yeah, speak to you soon.
Take it easy.